All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kristen for Bookish Pen Pals, and I'm here tonight streaming with author Michael Breen. Can I call you Mike?
Yeah, Mike's good.
Awesome. I'm going to wait just a couple minutes so everybody can get in because I'm not seeing viewers. So it's just to 7. So I'm going to give it a minute.
Sounds good.
There we go. Welcome, welcome. I'm just giving everybody just a minute to log in since it's just 7. We got comments coming up already, which is awesome. All right, let's get started because this will record also. So those of you who are coming in a little late, the video will be up on the events page and the main page as well. So I'm Kristen. I'm one of the admin here at Bookish Pen Pals, and I'm here with Mike Breen, and we're going to talk about his amazing indie book, Ever the Night Road. So I'm going to give it a little bit of intro. Sorry if I'm going to embarrass you, Mike. Ever the Night Road has won gold medals for Fantasy Reader's Favorite and IPPY Awards for 2023, an Indie Brag Medallion, a bronze for 2022 Wishing Bookshelf Awards, and was 2022 finalist for Indies Today and Book of the Year for Forward Indies. It is a huge deal, I think, as an indie author. So congratulations for those. Tell us a little bit about Ever the Night Road. I'm a huge fan, but in case some of our members haven't seen about it or had me post about it, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, well, thanks for that intro, Kristen, and it's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Really honored for you to ask me to join and talk about my book, which I love. I got my tea here and my Ever the Night Road mug, so I should be good to go, even with the time change. But yeah, so Ever the Night Road, it's postured as a YA fantasy, but I think the audience is also, the adult fantasy reader too. It's, fantasy. It's kind of always been. It was my first love, as a reader, and the very first books that I got as a little kid. I remember being in like elementary school and getting The Crystal Shard by R.A. Salvador, which the very first book when they had those like elementary book fairs, So that just that's always had a special place to me, even though, my reading interests are pretty diverse. And even when I was an undergrad, like my writing interests were pretty diverse. When we were getting close to the pandemic and I started really kind of concentrating on the type of book that I wanted to write, and I was going back to that time in my life, that kind of nostalgic, time with friends and the fantasy. It was, Dungeons and Dragons, all that stuff,
Oh, yeah.
those kind of cliches in middle school. And so I was like, hey, this is really what I want to put my attention into, because it just felt good to me. So anyway, it's a coming of age postured as a YA fantasy adventure, and it follows the course of the main protagonist, Dagny Losh, and she's a 17-year-old, and for the most part, the setting is this unnamed city, which is the city of water and glass, and all these different kind of spots that the adventure kind of takes Dagny through, and I was trying to, I was very conscious of a lot of the fantasy tropes, which, are good and fine. But I was intentionally trying to avoid certain tropes in the book, like the Dark Lord, or, lots of magic, or lots of races, different elves and all that kind of stuff. I didn't want to do any of that. So it's a fantasy, but it's not really an in-your-face fantasy. From my perspective, there's still that element of an element of supernatural there, and just kind of the twists and turns that Dagny encounters on her journey. And it's tough to talk, I think, in too much detail about the plot. That might be pretty vague to not give anything away. There's a lot of different
Yeah.
locales. The atmosphere plays a big part in the book. So there's a mythology there for sure. And anyway, she kind of joins up with this group of adventurer boys called the Navarong, self-styled the Navarong.
Yeah.
And you know, a- away she goes on her adventure.
I love that you said it's postured as YA, but in all reality, like I think that a lot of adults really are going towards YA books only because they're written so well and they're not always um they don't have a lot of those taboos in them that a lot of adult fantasy often has. Like I would let my daughter, who's 11, read this book. But I also go towards YA because the language isn't there and the worlds are really rich and they're fabulous. And that's what I really liked about this one. And, for a fantasy, um, there's so many things that are unknown in this book that I'm like, "Wait, what?" And you can go back, and I think I read a review when I was deep diving into this that, somebody compared the book to an onion, and you have to pull all the layers back, and I really like that because that's really what it's about. Every time I go through it, I'm like, "Wait a minute, I didn't pick that up the first time," and we'll talk about your sequel, as we go, because I was like, wait, I know that he mentioned Judd in it. I gotta go find it now. And it's one of those things that I think that there's so many layers to this book that there's something in there for everybody. And that's what I really loved about it. So I think that's really great. Um, so do you want to read from it now or do you
Yeah,
want to talk
yeah.
some more?
Let me read the passage. I got that marked.
Awesome.
So it should take me about 5 minutes or so. I hope that's okay.
It's perfect. Thank you so much for reading from it.
So again, this scene takes place about halfway through the book. Um, she's I should mention too. There's this focus of this chess-like game that kind of runs the
Yeah.
course of the book, and it's called Talend, and there's
Yeah.
all these different sets that people play, and it's basically like a chess but with different sets.
And way cooler.
Thanks. And so she makes friends through playing this game with this Talvran player, another a guy about her age, named Jawson Tasher, and his nickname is Tash. So she's joined up with Tash at this part of our little adventure at this segment, and she's looking for a fragment from her old life. Okay, so that's kind of the real kind of driving
Right.
part of the plot is she discovers the existence of this fragment from her old life, and she's got to find it. And
Right.
so she's led to this old palace on an island, and she's trying to get out there, and her and Tash discover the secret passage in this hidden
Ooh,
well. And the hidden well has this staircase, and it goes down deep underground,
yep.
deep under the lake called Deep Lake. And this is where this takes place. So they've just kind of gone down this deep staircase. They're trying to reach the old palace kitchens. Eventually, the staircase did end, and they found themselves standing in front of a flat stone tunnel stretching into the dark. It smelled dank and musty, like a sunken ship that had been pulled from the sea. Even though Dagny couldn't see any water, the air felt wet. "Which way is it heading?" Tash asked. Dagny pulled out her compass. "North, into Deep Lake," Tash said. "More like under it." They walked for what seemed like an hour. Just like the staircase in the well, this passage was singular, leading straight north. Straight to the old palace, Dagny thought. "Still think this is an escape route?" she asked. "I have no idea. There's nothing like this on any of the maps." "You brought him with you, right?" "Of course," Tash said, patting his bag. She was surprised by his seemingly fearless attitude. Dagny would have thought that between the two of them, she'd be the courageous one. But here she was, nervously watching the ceiling for any sign that it might collapse, while Tash marched forward, all but oblivious to the lake above. The passage finally opened into an enormous chamber that seemed to go on forever. It could have stretched across the entire underworld for all Dagny knew. Their path ended at a vast pool of water. Another lake, she thought, but this one was silent and still. Large columns rose from its basin, connecting to a vaulted ceiling. The column heads were carved into shapes of winged serpent-like creatures. This must be the cistern, Tash asked. He set the lantern on the ground and opened one of the maps. Dagny gazed across the dark water. A cistern? This whole thing was a reservoir for the palace? It seems like it could supply a city. Yeah, definitely excessive, I'd say. Do we have to cross the water? Dagny whispered over Tash's shoulder as he studied the map. I'm trying to figure that out. I hope we don't, she said. Tash mumbled something under his breath and walked over to the edge of the platform and scanned the underground lake. Everything all right? She asked. Doesn't look too deep. I can see the ground. You're saying we swim it? She didn't like the idea of that. Not at all. Although it was slightly warmer in the underground, it was still cold, and she didn't like all the carvings of monstrous serpents and winged creatures covering the columns. It seemed like a warning, and an obvious one at that. Tash considered her question. I don't think we'd have to swim. That water might only be chest deep. Oh, that makes me feel so much better. There's a landing just on the other side that'll take us into the palace proper. From there, we can find the gardens. Are you really scared? He asked. Yes, I'm scared. This place is scary, and it feels like something could just swallow you up. The silent, dark water truly frightened her. Oh, we've come pretty far, Tash said. You just want to go back? Dagny didn't answer. She just stared at the water. You think there's some monster swimming around down here? Tash asked with a wide grin on his face. I don't know. I mean, look at all the carvings. And why aren't you scared? Eh. The palace builders were obsessed with covering any kind of stone or marble with dramatic images. There's nothing down here. What would it eat? Think about it. A creature's been lurking here for hundreds of years. It has starved to death long before you were even born. There's nothing alive in this water. Couldn't something have come in from somewhere else? Nah, I don't think so. You don't think so? If you don't want to go, we don't have to go. I just thought you wanted to see what your sister had been drawing. I do. Tash put his hand on her shoulder. Then focus on the old palace. Remember, there's a reason for all this. Dagny took a moment to listen and absorb the silence of the chamber. You really think we can walk across? She asked. Yeah. Tag looked into the water again and smiled. I think so. Okay, then, let's do it. Tash sat on the ground and started to take off his boots. Trust me, you're going to want to be in dry clothes when we reach the other side. Is it far? Dagny strained her eyes, but she couldn't see anything beyond the glow of the lantern. Hard to know. Tash took his shirt off and pants and began to wrap everything into a tight bundle. Just carry it over your head when you cross. Finally, he pulled off his undergarments and kneeled by the edge of the platform. You're going to cross naked? She asked. I'd recommend it, but do what you want. Tash dipped his feet into the water. Wow, that's cold. Once I drop down, I'm going to cross as quick as possible. All right, hold on just a moment. Dagny turned away from Tash and nervously removed her shirt and pants. Don't look, seriously. Don't you look. I mean it, he shot back. Dagny wrapped her jacket around her clothes and boots and tied it as tight as she could with her scarf. She walked to the cold stone to where Tash was kneeling and began to shiver. If it's too bad, we'll come back, okay? Tash said, but you got to let me know. I'll go first. Sure. He took a deep breath and jumped into the water. Dagny cringed as the sound of the splash shattered the silence and echoed across the chamber. When she glanced down, the water was only slightly above Tash's waist. He swung his arms around from the chill. Everything good? She asked. Yeah, he wheezed in between short, sharp breaths. Gimme the lantern and clothes. As soon as Dagny handed him the bundle, Tash was off, quickly slogging through the water toward the opposite bank. Hey, you gonna wait for me? She called. Too cold. Hurry up, he said over his shoulder. Dagny moved the clothing to the edge of the platform, took a deep breath, and jumped in. The shock that hit her was suffocating. She gasped, sucking in even more air as the cold pinched at her bare skin. Without any time to think, Dagny grabbed her bundle of clothes and started off after Tash. The chamber felt even larger as she waded through the giant cistern. Tash's lantern light bobbed along in front, casting amber tones up the marble columns that faded onto the ceiling above. Dagny tried to remain focused on that light. It wouldn't do her any good to let fearful thoughts creep into her head, but the cold, black water rose high on her ribs, and on more than one occasion, she almost slipped on the slick stone beneath her feet. Something was here beneath the water, or she'd be completely helpless against it. Was that her greatest fear? Being pulled down and drowned, like the flooded Morka rushing over the Rake's Mount? If she hadn't gotten out the night of the storm, hadn't run away during one of her episodes, she'd be drowned with him. There was something destructive hiding in the back of her mind, like she wasn't supposed to have gotten out of there. Just one random decision to run off was the only thing that separated her from life and death. But Corley had gotten out, maybe some others. Her teeth chattered and her arms ached from holding the bundle of clothes above the waterline. Tasha's light moved further and further away. Random images of death and water poured into her mind. She saw the pale, bloated face from Limmerstown, the image of something drowned and dragged up from the bottom of the sea. Tasha's light suddenly rose in the air and stopped moving. There was a sound of sloshing and Tasha's voice. Dag, Dag, you there? It sounded faint. Yes, I'm here, she wheezed out. Hurry, I reached the opposite side. You're making too much noise, she thought. Dagny could see the outline of his body crouched over the water, waiting to help pull her out. And then she saw something else. A mass in the water, just to the edge of the light, near the bank. Something was in the lake. Dagny panicked, racing toward Tash and the platform. Slow down, Tash said. He hadn't seen it. Get me out of here. Something's in the water. And scene.
Ah, I just read that part this afternoon. So it's awesome that you picked that because I'm like, okay, I know something's in the water. Oh no. Fantastic. Thank you so much for reading that. That was
Sure,
fabulous.
sure.
I love that description of that whole cistern because it kind of goes into my first question really about the world of Ever the Night Road because it's this rich and vibrant place, but at the same time, like the descriptions are so dark. And um if anybody goes to Instagram, and goes to Michael Breen, you can see some of the art on there, and it's incredible, and it's also vibrant and dark at the same time. Did you model any of this world, because you call it the world, after any places or cities in our own world? Because they can be described in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, a touch, right? So I think that there's a touch of Venice and a touch
Mm,
of Paris that was in my mind with this city. I think I was focused on the Seine when I was talking about the Morca. I mean, I think I mean, the city's on a lagoon. It's got the canals. It's at the kind of the convergence of different empires and cultures, which is what kind of Venice was back when. Um, so I think there's that. It's that kind of like, but Paris is more sprawling and bigger. So
right,
it's that kind of. I mean, in my mind anyway, it's that like early 1800s Europe kind of thing. Into
right.
the Holy Roman Empire when there were just like you know hundreds of small kingdoms throughout.
Right, right, and it's almost like the districts of today in a way, where you have all these, places around it, because it seems so vast and yet so small. It's interesting as you read it, where they're going because 'cause they're on this big adventure, this epic thing really.
Yeah, I tried
Um,
to just kinda, like, narrow in on them and
yeah,
their limited perspective, but then give hints of this outside
yeah,
world, and so, yeah, I think the lands to the north, which the Vonland and Vons and all these kinda little cities that are mentioned,
yeah,
that's I think in my mind is my kind of romanticized idea of what, Europe probably
yeah,
was at that time?
yeah, I love that. So, Dagny's a character that's looking to find her way in the world. I think all of us can relate to that at some point in our lives. What advice do you think she'd give us about taking chances and risks in life? Because she really is doing that by leaving her home in search of her sister and her family and to find friends in all reality. What advice do you think she would give us about that?
Yeah, I mean, nothing happens without her going off, right?
Hmm.
Her background, she was brought up in this, real poor area of the city called the Rakes Mount. And when she was a kid, she ran off and it was on a night of the storm, after her brother died and the Morca flooded and it flooded kind of these lower poor areas and wiped out her neighborhood. So she got away and but everyone else, drowned. So there was that kind of like underlying trauma for her character. But then her life takes a total 180, and this is all
Hmm.
prior to the book starting. And she gets in touch with her brother's best friend who's older and ends up raising her with his wife and his,
Right.
turns out to be young kids. So she then kind of leads this sheltered life, but her brother was an adventurer and she's got this kind of like adventurer spirit. And she's at the beginning of the book, she's stagnant, right? She's been like
Mhm.
basically in this privileged prison and this desire to go out and take that risk. She's gonna make something happen. It's time. And
Yeah.
so this other kind of theme of the book that's there with the night road, it's all this uh astrological kind of like mythology of the
Mhm.
night road connecting everything. There's this thing called the night road, and it
Yeah.
connects all, everything's connected to the night road. So in a lot of ways, her journey kind of mirrors the night road, because once she kind of starts off on this journey that is seemingly unconnected from where it's going to take her and what it's going to lead to her personally, she's, it's all connected. So she has to step on the path first. So I think that would be her advice. Long-winded way to answer your question, I guess. But she had to take that risk to even get out there. And then she
Yeah.
continues to take these risks. And those risks, the desire to be able to walk through the door when it opens, you know, ends up leading her into something that was unimaginable to her, and she would have continued to be unaware of had she not taken the risk.
Yeah.
So in a way, it was all worth it, even though it's dangerous. And
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are afraid of that risk too, and she was in some parts of the book very afraid, and her gut told her to keep going, so I really love that. It's very relatable. Um, so I'm a big fan of your Instagram and the artwork. Did you create the artwork, for the book, for your Instagram? I mean, it's gorgeous.
thanks. Yeah, and I mean, it depends kind of on the picture. It's digital art. So I mean, I put it all together. So I mean,
Yeah,
with different kind of digital techniques, and some things, some images are a lot more hands-on. Some are, taking clip art and putting it into something, or putting together an
yeah,
underlying picture. I've pulled like I might generate something from AI, but then take like elements of that. I don't just generate a picture and use like an AI picture, but I might like pop
right.
stuff out and cut stuff up um, and add textures and lines and all this kind of stuff. So I mean, I um, put it together that way on my own.
Yeah, I think it's pretty incredible, and I think that's kind of the joy maybe of being an indie author too, is you have some kind of control over rather than, big publishing house telling you what your art should look like because it is beautiful. It's
Thanks.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
We need to have some merch for it though. And I told you I was gonna bug you about that because I've seen some bookmarks and the merch is hopefully it's coming because it's pretty great. Um, so there's a sequel coming, and I had to go back in the book and I'm like, okay, so the sequel is named Judd. I know it's mentioned in the book. Um, and I'm excited about that. Can you tell us about the sequel? Will we see Dagny in it? And when's it coming out?
Yeah, so I'm wrapping up the sequel's called Judd, and that it's a bit more fantastical than ever the Night Road. Um, Judd is kind of mentioned a little bit in
Hmm.
the first book, and yeah, I mean, you see Dagny in it. She's the star once again, and and yeah, so Judd is this myth, this myth that's
Yeah.
hinted at in the first book, and it's its own city, and it's a shifting city. So every twilight, parts of the city shift and open up and reveal themselves or change, and so that's kind of the element there. And she's got to continue her journey to into Judd to find what she's been searching for. Um,
I
but
can't
yeah,
wait.
so there's characters in that there's brand new characters. There's some reoccurring characters from the first book. Once again, it's her journey. I'm wrapping up the kind of last round of edits here, and then going to send it to a couple close friends to do the read and let me know if there's anything I missed out. So hopefully I'll be putting it out in December, in late December.
Oh, yay! Christmas presents, everybody. Christmas presents. Um, is Max going to be in it?
I you got to read it.
Ah, I'm not gonna spoil it, but like, yeah. And I love when they're talking about the night road in that. That's like one of my favorite parts of the book. So I hope he's in it. I hope. So the overarching theme really in this book is family. Um, so I want to talk about the overarching theme in the sequel also. Is it also family because of what she's looking for, or is it something else?
Yeah, so the family is not as prevalent a theme in the sequel. I would say that change is a big theme.
Mm,
Once again, I've tried to, I think, mirror the atmosphere and the setting into kind of her own personal thing too. So the city is a changing city, and there's change in the city, but then there's also a change in her and some of the other things that go on. So I would say, change is a big one. Other themes I think that continue from the first book are there's this theme or element of memory and forgetting, and I think that there's a part of Dagny that is kind of frightened by forgetting. She's in the beginning of the book. She in the very very beginning of Night Road, she tries to remember what her brother looked like, and she can't. So she's got to remember how he felt when he hugged her, and so it's this, and that's kind of mirrored too, I think, in the history of the world. And there are things there,
mhm,
kind of like at the there's these old stories and people don't know if they're like true or what's not true, and things are forgotten about in the history and
right,
things that aren't really remembered. So that's that kind of like loss of memory, whether that's through you know trauma or you
right,
know age or whatever it is a
right.
theme that continues in the second book as well.
That's
Yes.
fantastic.
Kind of interesting. You told the family thing, and for you might get a kick out of this, and for because you've read the book, and if other people have read the book, is I wrote the first draft of Ever the Night Road, and it was done. So the story and the plot and everything were there, and I got this DNA test for Christmas, and I did a
I
DNA
I
test.
saw I saw you did this in an interview, and we have a connection there with that.
Yeah, it was crazy, and then I found out that I have have his half sister who's 12 years younger than me and lives in the city next door.
So, I found out 2 years ago through the same thing that I had a brother,
Wow,
and he, actually lives about 45 minutes north of where I do, um, and I had no idea.
it's
But
amazing.
I remember his mother when I was a very small child,
Yeah, right.
but I had no idea about him. So, like, that family piece of it is ancestry is pretty deep.
It's
Like,
crazy. It's
it
crazy.
does.
I
It
had
opens up
no
this whole
idea, and then I connected with her and everything, so it's pretty awesome. But that
that's
just the timing of it kind of blew me away. I mean, I would tell people that if I told people that, they'd think I'm lying, you know?
the night road,
Yeah,
right? All things are connected.
right.
Like, things happen in life for reasons, and,
Gotta take
like,
the DNA test, and there you go, the
yeah,
answer.
and there's, prime example, right? Yeah. I also, I was reading your press kit, and it says that sometimes you are also trying to figure out the mandolin. Um, and that's a do you play?
I've played guitar for about 25 years or something, and
Mhm.
then, yeah, at the very beginning of the pandemic, I got a mandolin, and so I've been plucking around with that, which is, I mean, it's a lot of similarities to guitar, but yeah, it's pretty cool, but, you know.
I listened,
Say that.
so I listen to my girlfriend play the mandolin almost every day. She's a guitar player as well, and, we went and saw Elle King, and she fell in love with the mandolin, so I was like, "Wow, there's a lot of connections here," because, between the family DNA thing and, like, the mandolin playing and guitar playing, like, it's pretty cool, that artistic
Awesome.
stuff, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
Yeah. So this is a pen pal group, and I always loved and with with the question of because in all reality, pen pal groups are about building personal connections, and we're a close knit family in this group. And I always ask this. So, what do you think Dagny's intro pen pal letter would say?
Oh,
Is
yeah,
she?
that's a tough one, you know? I'd
Uh
say
huh.
she'd be interested if you could recommend any good travel books. I think that, you know? I read
I
a
would.
lot of travel books too. That's funny, yeah.
I
But,
would love to get her intro letter and have her tell me all the places she's been because that's like a big thing, you know?
uh-huh.
And I wonder what kind of books she'd read too. I wonder if she would be into like thriller or horror rather than like fantasy.
Yeah, I don't know if yeah, 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 it's kind of a tough one. I was trying to give some thought to it and yeah, I don't know that she'd be a big fantasy reader, you know? S the you know, the, um the adventurers compendiums, she references in the book, which are kind of like, like a
Yeah.
travel log full of adventure stories. So I think if it's grounded in reality, she's a bit into it. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe the thriller horror. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Maybe after Judge, she'll have some additional insight.
Well, we'll have to talk then
Right.
about it and revisit that question. Um, I don't know if you can see the comments on your side, but before we leave you, I just wanted to show some of those comments. This one's from Kay. Hi, Mike. So excited to hear about your book, Ever the Night Road. Kay is also one of our admin, too. Um, uh, Betty Harris is saying hello. Um, I love this one also from Kay that she wants to get her preteen to read it with her. My daughter is always looking for books I'm reading, and so I really preview them, and this is one that I know that she would like as well.
Oh, good. Yeah,
So,
it's hard for me to get a sense, I just as to what is the age appropriateness of something. It's just kind of like lost on me. So it's good to hear other people's
yeah,
perspectives who have kids and kind of what their thoughts are on age appropriateness of you know the book and stuff.
yeah. Um, I wish that there was a name on this one, but I love this one. I'm rereading Ever the Night Road in preparation for Judd. So, um, and Kay also said she ordered 2 copies because the cover is gorgeous. I also have 2 copies.
Oh, good.
Um, it's one of those things. And if you ever put out a hardcover, I'll probably own that too because buy all the copies.
Thanks.
Um,
I can do that. I'll
yeah,
probably circle back around hardcovers after this one gets out. But yeah, the cover's all
yeah,
done for Judd, and then all the interior stuff, the art and the map and everything. So it's good to go as soon as the editing gets done.
yeah. Another user said, "Wow, I found my sister last year too, the same way." So lots of connections there.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It really is, and it's a little trippy. I don't know about you, but when I met my brother in person, I was like, "Whoa, you're our father." Um, like, even mannerisms, and I was like, "Okay, this is, like, really strange, but
Probably
very cool too."
we had the same interests. We'd grown up, obviously uh, totally apart, but the same interest in music, the same, is like
Wow.
it's crazy. The same types of movies, especially when I was kind of her age, or what I had grown up with, what I was into when I was like in my 20s, is what
Right?
the same kind of thing. It's like, how's this work? How's this happen? It's crazy.
Yeah, the universe is trippy like that. Yeah, my brother, like, is a fisherman, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, you never met our father and you're what?" Like, all into the outdoors, and, like, it's interesting how genetics or the universe, like, puts that in place, you know?
It sure
So,
is. It sure is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope that you come back and talk about Judd when it's out because I'll be like keeping the group up to date, and I don't know. I hope everyone becomes as big a fan of it as I am because I really did enjoy it. So
Well, thanks so
thanks,
much, Kristen. Yeah, yeah. Happy to talk about Judd too. So,
fantastic.
yeah, I'll be doing a lot of press, so it'll be hard to miss when that one gets launched.
Sweet. I can't wait. I'll help spread the word.
All right, awesome.
All right.
So,
Thank you so much again for coming on. And then for everybody else, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And don't forget to look in the featured section of the website because in the group, everything that we do is located in the featured section from giveaways to book talks to everything. Look in featured and also in events. Thanks, everybody.
thanks, Kristen.
Thanks, Mike.